Hello everyone, and welcome to the internal communications stage. Absolutely full house with standing room only. It's immense to have you here, and we really appreciate your interest. So thank you for coming. So in this session, we are privileged to have Mark Duffy, Director of Talent at Ryanair, and Eva Barker, Employee Communication and Engagement Consultant at Workvivo. Please give them a round of applause, and they're going to take us through why internal communication is at the heart of Ryanair's people strategy. Thank you.
Perfect. Mark, thank you so much for joining me today. So, Director of Talent at Ryanair. I'm sure everyone is familiar with Ryanair, but what they might not be familiar with is the sheer scale in the airline industry. So maybe you could give us a bit of an overview of that, and maybe we'll take a look then at employee culture at Ryanair and what that looks like.
Okay, fantastic. I feel a bit under pressure, all these people in front of me, but thanks very much for coming along to the session. So Ryanair, just quickly, we are the largest airline in Europe by some margin. We're double the size of our closest competitor. Today alone, we will carry 500,000 people across Europe on 3,000 flights. So we've got about 600 aircraft in the fleet. We've got 20,000 staff. And in the next 7 years, we'll probably be the biggest airline in the world. So, lots of challenges there from a recruitment perspective, talent, and also internal comms as well. If anybody's got any complaints about Ryanair, please don't come to me afterwards, all right? But,
Perfect. So 500,000 passengers, 20,000 employees, efficiency, very productive. What's the culture like for that employee base then? So talk to us a bit about your culture at Ryanair and what you've fostered.
I would probably say that we've got a really unique culture at Ryanair, which is driven by our CEO, Michael O'Leary. He's very infamous in what he does, in what he says. The culture is driven from the top. Our CEO has been there for the last 35 years. It's very much an open culture at Ryanair. For example, we like to promote within. It's very, very rare that we actually hire senior talent from outside of the organisation, just simply because we like to give all of our people the opportunity to grow and develop internally. We recently put out a funny anecdotal story actually onto the platform that we're going to be talking about, and it was the pictures of three people, and it was, who do you think used to be a hairdresser? And there was a picture of the director of in-flight, there was a picture of the chief financial officer, and then there was somebody then who was from the pilot's office. So we said to our staff, look, who do you think used to be a hairdresser? And a lot of people chose the director of in-flight because you kind of associate kind of like the glamour of, in-flight cabin crew with that industry. But it was actually our CFO. So our chief financial officer, a lady called Tracy McCann, she's in charge of about 15 billion euros worth of revenue, and she used to be a hairdresser. So at Ryanair, it's not necessarily about what university you went to, what college you went to. It's about the work ethic. And if you were interviewing with our CEO and he looked at your CV and you went to the best university, you went to the best schools, he's not bothered about that. He wants to know, what part-time jobs did you have? Did you work in a pub? Did you work in McDonald's, Starbucks? They're the key areas that we look at. Just to add to that as well, very much an open door policy that we have. Nobody really has an office. There's only 6 people in the entire business that have an office. Everybody else is out on the floor. We all work in the office. During COVID, there was a short period of time when we worked from home just because we had to. But everybody's been back in the office now for the last couple of years. And our reasoning behind that is that our pilots and our cabin crew can't work from home, obviously. So why should we? So we're all in the office. It's a roll up your sleeves mentality. Sometimes it does feel like it's the world against Ryanair. We are the underdog. But we love that as well at the end of the day. In the way that we approach our business, we do everything from Monday to Friday. So we're not a big American organization where you need to jump through lots of hoops to get decisions done. We'll meet on a Monday. The management team will meet on the Monday. You'll discuss what's happened the previous week. We'll then get given what we call action items that will go away during the week, and then we'll report back again on a Friday. And you go home on a Friday and your work is done. And that's the way that it's done. And that's the mentality that we drive. And it works. Some people don't like it. During the interview process, we always try and create a really good picture of what life at Ryanair is like, because it's really important that we get the right fit, whether it's the right fit for you as somebody coming into the organisation, and the right fit for us in terms of that person. So a lot of the time we hire on potential versus experience, and what is the right fit for Ryanair. Brilliant.
Perfect. And obviously very ambitious growth plans for the next few years ahead. A small fleet of planes on the way, a potential for a new 10,000 jobs in the future. Yeah. So as Director of Talent, what are your own goals within that? And then how does your internal communication strategy align to those growth goals?
Okay, so just in terms of our growth plans at the moment, we're hiring about 10,000 people every year. So that'd be about 2,000 pilots, about 6,000 cabin crew, about 1,000 engineers, and then the rest of them will be support staff within our head offices. So we announced a couple of weeks ago that we're going to take on board another 300 aircraft. So for every aircraft that we bring into the fleet, you need 12 pilots and you need 25 cabin crew. So that's obviously, from a workforce planning perspective, we're going to be hiring at least another 10,000 people now every year for the next 7 years, through to 2033. So from an internal communications perspective, the challenge that we have is that most of our staff, they're not in the office. The office for our staff, it's the aircraft. So before COVID, all of our staff would have gone to the crew room to report for duty. They would have met the pilot, they would have met the rest of the staff that they were flying with that day. But during COVID, we decided that everybody had to report to the aircraft before the flight, and that's where you meet all of your crew. So that's what happens now. We don't have any crew rooms anymore. So you've got 20,000 crew whose only office is that aircraft, which is either 5 o'clock in the morning, or if they're on the latest shift, it's from 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So as a management function, we needed to be able to communicate, clearly and effectively with our people. Whether that's to do with their rosters, whether it's to do with any news that's happening across the network. There's a lot of disruption at the moment with the French, and I don't know whether there's any French in the audience, but it's a pain in the backside at the moment with all the strikes that are happening. So, we need to be able to communicate with our staff and say, okay, guys, it's going to be a bit of a crappy day operationally, but we really appreciate what you're doing. So we used to have our own version of Twitter called Fleet Tweet, which our crew downloaded onto their iPads or onto their phones. And that's how we communicated with our crew previously. But then leading on now to Workvivo.
Thank you. That led very nicely into my next question. So you were looking for a communication platform and you reached out to Workvivo. So what led to that moment and why Workvivo?
Okay, so like I said, we used to have our own version of Twitter. So 20,000 people that had it downloaded onto their iPads. All the pilots would have an iPad. All of our cabin crew would have a mobile phone device. We developed what we call Fleet Tweet, which was our Twitter, did that internally. It was great, but there was no two-way communication. It was all comms coming from us, just going straight out. So it was a bit boring for the staff, to be honest. So our CEO, Eddie Wilson, he used to be the Chief People Officer, so he's really well invested in internal communications. And he just wanted to have a better, clearer line of communication with our staff that would allow them to also communicate with us as well. So about 18 months ago, we went out to the market. We spoke to a lot of companies that would have similar employee engagement platforms out there. Ultimately, we went with Workvivo simply because, number one, they're an Irish company. So for us, as an Irish airline, it meant, that we could, get them up to Dublin really, really quickly, and we could work with them very, very closely. But we don't spend money quickly at Ryanair. We are a low-cost airline. So, to invest in something like this was a big deal for us. So we did a lot of due diligence. So, we wanted to make sure that whoever we brought on board for our internal comms platform, we're working with big players out there as well. So we went with Workvivo because it was an out-of-the-box solution for us. All of our crew could download the app onto their devices very, very quickly. And we got it going within about 6 weeks of actually, that first initial product meeting, which was really quick because we like to get things done quickly at Ryanair.
You might not be aware of this, Mark, but Ryanair does hold the current record for onboarding. Yeah, we call it the priority onboarding package now.
That's what I'd like to hear.
So looking at onboarding your company onto a platform like that, and then taking your internal communications strategy and driving it through that, what are the challenges for a project like that?
Okay, so the first challenge that we had was obviously, we had the company intranet, which a lot of companies would have, and a lot of the boring day-to-day stuff was going on there. But like you said, it was very, very one way. It was all inwards, outwards. So the biggest challenge for us was making sure that all of our 24,000 staff, including the support staff, could actually have access to the Workvivo platform. So our data is fed in from different systems. So cabin crew might be fed in from one system, the pilots might be on SAP. So we needed to make sure that we drove all of that data into one platform and gave access to all of the staff at the same time, because we launched on one day. We had a few problems initially whereby people couldn't log in. And then, that was a bit of a pain in the backside then for our staff, because they had to go back out and teach people. But that was expected. That wasn't Workvivo's fault. That was simply because our single sign-on was coming from different sources. So that would have been the biggest challenge in terms of the onboarding. After that, it was making sure that the stuff that we put on there was engaging content, because we didn't want to invest in this employee platform that was a big investment and then just left it stagnant. So for us, it was all about getting exciting content onto the platform from day one and making sure that people engage with us.
And you have mentioned already, Eddie, your CEO, having that connection to the staff. And we speak so often in Workvivo around the importance of senior leadership having that voice and communicating directly with the employee base. Eddie's very active on the platform. He's one of our kind of top users in terms of interacting with the employees. How does he use it to engage your employees? And then what's the impact or what's the importance of that, both for Eddie and your employees as well?
Okay, so just to kind of paint a picture of the way that the app works, it's similar to Facebook. So you download it onto your phones, you open it up, you'd have followers, you'd have different spaces that might correspond to maybe the work group that you're in. So for example, we'd have a space that's called London Stansted, where all of our employees based in London Stansted, that's their space. A lot of that content might be driven locally. So, we might have new onboarding spaces within that space, whereby all the new employees can find out about accommodation, best places to go. We also then created spaces around maybe personal interests, what are people doing? Because one of the biggest advantages of working for an airline is that you get staff travel. Okay, so we opened up a space about what do people do at the weekend. We then opened up a space about pets. So our pilots, cabin crew can go into these spaces, post pictures of the pets. So it's not all about boring work stuff. The only way this is ever going to work is if it's engaging content. But one of the best spaces that we actually opened up was called Ask Eddie, which is Ask Our CEO. So we open it up. Any one of our 24,000 staff can go in and they can ask Eddie Wilson, our CEO, a question directly. Doesn't matter what question it is. Now, when we first opened up that space, we were a bit hesitant because we thought, oh, Jesus Christ, what kind of questions are going to come into Ask Eddie? Now, from our perspective, obviously the airline industry is very, very regulated. We recognised trade unions back in 2018. We always said we would never ever dream of recognising trade unions, but we did it. There was a bit of a gasp from a management perspective when we did it, but it's worked out better now in terms of employee relations, so on and so forth. So what we found was that a lot of the chat from our staff was on WhatsApp groups. So there'd be a load of localized WhatsApp groups that we wouldn't have access to, but we knew they were happening because I'm not going to say we'd have our spies, but people were telling us that our staff were talking about this, that, and the other on the WhatsApp group. So we thought if we open up access to Eddie, they'll hopefully move away from the WhatsApp groups and they'll come directly to us and ask us the questions. So since we've had it, I think we've had about 250 questions. It's been open for about 5 months now, and we've had about 250 questions come into Eddie, and he answers them directly himself. And that's anything. That's people that might be getting annoyed because there might have been an issue with the pay. Okay, goes direct to the CEO. The CEO then turns around to the finance team. Why is this person not been paid? People come to us with new ideas. So, they're the ones that are seeing what's happening across the network. They're the people that are flying all of our 500,000 passengers a day. So they come to us with really good ideas on what we can do to change the business. We had our results announced a couple of weeks ago. So it was our full year results. They were brilliant. We made 1.45 billion euros profit. Off the back of that, then we can then put employee satisfaction surveys then out to the staff and actually, get a sense of what it is that they're feeling. But at least we've got that feedback then from a senior management level.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of what you expected to kind of see on the platform, right? So let's consider, your employees on it in terms of usage. You guys are pretty much a gold standard in terms of active users coming back day after day. What do you think drives people onto the platform? What do you think keeps them coming back to Fleet Hub day after day?
Okay, so we've got 24,000 people that have access to it. And at the moment, the sign-up level, it's just about 90% at the moment. So I think as of today, there's about 21,500 active users out of the 24,000. At any given time, we've probably got about 13,000 active users throughout the week that might go onto it for various reasons. Now, to be honest, most of the 12,500 active users, probably 90% of that is cabin crew. Just because the cabin crew love going on social media. They might post pictures this morning of them boarding the aircraft. There might be a nice sunrise. They're all there with the uniform, all glammed up. So a lot of them would use it because, they're used to social media. We can see that, they're in there, they're engaged in the content. But to have 12,500 active users on there on a weekly basis for us, that's a good return on investment, because we can actually see what's happening. The analytics, you can drive down. I can see whether it's London Stansted base that are more actively engaged versus Birmingham, for example, what kind of stories they're liking in terms of the analytics. So, it's fantastic from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. And considering, I suppose, we've already spoken, about the challenges with a project like this. What's been kind of the impact or the value for you guys? What have you seen over the last couple of months? And I'm wondering if you have any examples in terms of that impact or that value that you've seen.
Okay, I'd probably say one of the biggest values from it is, number one, getting feedback from the staff, which you're not going to get on a box standard intranet. You can't get that feedback from them. So number one, it's getting the staff feedback on us as a business and what we can improve and hear directly from them. Like for example, right, we have new aircraft that look fantastic. Some of you may have flown on them. It's the MAX aircraft. It got a lot of publicity because there was a few accidents, not with us, but a couple of years ago. But they're the brand spanking new aircraft, right? And they are the safest plane in the world now from an audit perspective. You would think from a usability for the cabin crew that they'd be brilliant, but they're actually not, and they're actually giving out about eating their lunch at the back of the aircraft because it's really open now. But we only got that feedback through the platform because they said to us, guys, there's nowhere for us to eat our lunch now because all of the passengers can see us when they go down to the toilet. So we reconfigured something off the back of that gave them privacy during a long flight to eat their lunch. If we hadn't got that feedback through the platform, we would never have known that. Another one then would be from an onboarding perspective. I'm going to put my hand up here. From an onboarding point of view, we're not necessarily the best company in the world. Obviously, if you're a pilot or your cabin crew, it's all regulated, and you have to go through a lot of training, and it's all structured. But from a head office perspective, we weren't the best onboarding. We used to get people in, there'd be no communication before they came in, whereas now we've really put in a robust onboarding process in place. So we created these spaces so people can join that space before they even come into the organization. So, a month before, they can join that space, they can get engagement, they can meet their team, they know when they're then going on day one, for example. So that was a game changer. And then once they're in the organization, then, they'll be in that onboarding space for 4 weeks afterwards. So if there's any issues, whether it's IT or, kind of like the day-to-day issues that somebody might have from an onboarding perspective, then they can, talk to people within that space. From an internal careers perspective, we've seen about probably a 30% increase in internal applications now to our head office role. So like I said, we like to promote within, and the platform has allowed us now to flag all of our internal jobs with 24,000 people, whereas previously it was on the intranet and it didn't really have a big effect. So we're getting a lot more internal people now apply to the job. So cabin crew would be a big driver of head office jobs for us. They might spend 2 years as cabin crew, then they come into the head office and then have office jobs. So certainly from like an internal development perspective, it's been fantastic for that.
Brilliant. And I suppose looking at the current climate, retention and talent development, obviously front centre for a director of talent. Do you think more talent leads need to be focused in this space given the current climate?
Yeah, no, for sure. So from our perspective, look, whenever you get like a new platform or a new app, there's a lot of evolution within that app. So over the next 6 months, the way that we're probably going to use the app from a talent management perspective and, trying to keep attrition at bay is on surveys. So, we can send anonymous surveys out on the platform. We can drive it down to certain locations. So if I want to feel the sentiment in Birmingham with our pilots, I can go onto the app and I can drive that down. I can send them a survey through Workvivo just to the pilots in Birmingham, 5 or 6 questions, and then we can get that feedback coming forward. And that's going to help us from an attrition perspective. Because of Brexit, we've got a lot of fight for talent in the UK specifically at the moment. We're having to hire a lot of cabin crew and pilots on visas, which is costing us millions at the moment, but we just don't have that availability of talent here. So if I can use the app now to find out what's happening at a base level, that's going to stop our people leaving to the likes of Jet2 and EasyJet, because I can then feed it then back into the management, that way.
Absolutely, and from the sounds of things, it'll be a busy few years ahead in terms of recruitment for you guys. Brilliant. So, look, guys, what we might do is open up the floor and see if anybody has any particular questions they'd like to ask Mark.
I'd certainly say it's that generation that is content hungry. We found it difficult with our head office staff with the content, to be honest, to begin with on the platform, because they were only seeing probably a limited number of like articles that were being posted or videos, whereas our cabin crew, who are the hungry people, they're the young generation, they want content on demand all of the time. So, we'd have an internal communications team of 4 people, and they're constantly doing videos, the TikToks, getting it out to the cabin crew, because they want that feedback. They want to feel loved. They want to engage with you as well. So, yeah, absolutely. There's a massive divide from that perspective. And it's keeping up with it from a content perspective as well. What engages them, what themes they're going to be interested in. If you look at the cabin crew, They love incentives, so our cabin crew are incentivized to sell on board, and they get some bloody great trips out of it. Dubai, Ibiza, Miami. We're every day we're putting up incentive trips through our suppliers just to, get them interested. But yeah, absolutely, there is a massive divide from that perspective, and then I suppose as well from a management perspective, we're obviously pushing the managers to put content on there. A lot of it is actually driven through the platform, to be honest. So we would have set up what we call spaces. So if you go onto the platform, you can set up a space for like in-flight safety, for example. So in-flight safety, you've got 14,000 members of cabin crew. On a daily basis then, the management team would be going in, they'd be putting out all of the safety memos, you'd be putting up obligatory reads, so you would know then that the crew members actually read that safety message. Similarly then for the pilots, the flight crew, we'd have spaces set up for them then. If we want to get any operational messages out to them, the guys can go onto the app 24/7 and get that information out to them. Like I said, with the whole ATC issues everybody's having at the moment, a lot of that communication from the operations control center would be driven to crew that way, so we can actually nail it down to specific flights. So if we just want to send a message to a specific group of people, we can do that through the app as well. I mean, look, I'm more than happy to give you my email address afterwards, and I can run you through it. Yeah, cool. What we did was, right, we have a lot of apps that our pilots and cabin crew have to access in order to see their rosters, in order to book staff travel. So what we did is we moved those apps onto Workvivo. So the only way that somebody can book staff travel now is by going on to Workvivo. The only way you can see your pay slip is by going on to Workvivo, because it's integrated with SAP then. So there's apps that can sit within the app. So that was it. Yeah, as simple as that, to be honest. But it's a good question, because how you make this big investment, how do you get 24,000 people onto it? Well, you kind of force them onto it, to be honest, and that's what we did. But look, it was a great way of getting people onto there. Okay, really good question, right? So for all of our flight crew, the pilots, they have iPads, so they access it that way. All of our cabin crew, they have it's like a mobile phone device. So when they do the onboard sales, there's also loads of apps on there as well. The cabin crew, they've all downloaded it off their own device because they love doing it. So it's available through the Apple Store. It's available through Android as well. So we didn't want to force anybody to do that because, like you said, there's regulation now around contacting people out of hours. So we literally just said, if you want to download it onto your personal devices, it's your choice. Exactly, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark and Eva, and thank you everyone for your engagement.
Thanks, guys.
Round of applause,
Thank you.
please. Thank you.